download the Illustrator file. You'll find that in Canvas. And then we want to put that into our folder. So I save all of my stuff into this folder here per semester in the classroom 2510. And then I'm going to make a new folder, and this is going to be Arcade Sarcona Sean. Okay, and that's way I know whose it is, I know what it is. And then inside here I want to make a couple folders. One of them is going to be source images, and then another one is going to be images, and then another one is going to be scenes. Okay, and that way it just helps me keep organized. Now the Illustrator file that you should have is this one here. There will be two of them actually, but this will be one of them, which is the arcade curves. The other one will be arcade texture, and we're going to bring this into Cinema. So let me just make sure that I have the right stuff inside the source images folder. I'm going to just snag it from this other folder. There we go. And I'm going to go bring it in. So I'm going to come up here to this file area where it says objects. I'm going to go to file and merge. Okay. And I'm going to go to images. Oops. Make sure I go in the right folder. Source images and arcade curves. Now this will pop up. It's asking you the different settings that you want for this. The only thing we need to do is make sure this says 100 centimeters, and then turn these connected splines and group splines off if they happen to be on. You'll also notice that it says file detected as Illustrator 8, so make sure that any file we ever bring in this way is Illustrator 8. Okay, now I'm going to use my hotkeys to Alt and left drag to spin around, Alt and middle drag to pan, Alt and right mouse button to zoom out. And using those keys, eventually I'll be able to find this thing. I can also hit O, and that's going to frame the items that I have here. Then I can use my Alt middle, Alt right, and so on to be able to see where they're at. Now, I don't want them to be sitting below the grid. Okay, so if I move over here, you can see the grid is like there, and the curves are down here. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my move tool, which is E. I'm going to grab the green arrow and just lift it straight up. And then I'm going to grab the red arrow and pull it kind of over here a little bit. Doesn't have to be exactly in the middle or anything. I just don't like to work with the objects below the grid. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of adjust these things. Now, inside of the object area, we should be able to open this expansion and see all of the different curves in here. And they're not labeled, even from Illustrator here, if we were to open this. They're not labeled at all, so we just have to live with that. So what we want to do is just start with the main shapes. Okay, so I'm going to start with this main curve right here, this big one that goes on the outside of it. And I'm going to use my extrude to do that. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I'm clicked on this path here, and if I want to, I can hit enter and then just give this a name and just call this frame path. That way I'll know it's called frame path. I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key. I'm going to click on this and hold, and I'm going to go to extrude. Okay, if I were to just click on that, it would actually execute this. I don't want that. I want to click and hold, get to that other one. Now, as I have built that, now it's taken this curve and built the surface. I'm going to zoom in here. There we go. And I'm going to look at these edges because I want to create a little tapering effect. I want this to look kind of like rounded inside here. So I'm going to go down to the attributes area down here. I'm going to go to where it says caps. And I'm going to start to play with this size. So I'm just going to pull this up. And we'll see if we spin around a little bit that we're actually getting this nice little bevel. Here is no bevel. Here is some bevel. Okay, so that adds a bit of detail to this. I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to go to load presets. And in here you can pick what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go to, I think I like this quarter circle. That one looks nice. So I'm just going to double click it. and now it applies it. Now it's hard to see that it's actually happening, but if we get really close to this, we'll be able to see there is definitely a step there. I just need to adjust my settings so that it's more apparent. So I can play with the size. Okay, that'll adjust that. I may need to hit extend shape. That way I can adjust that. And then I may also need to scroll down to shape depth and play with that. And I may need to also play with segments. Okay. Now, when I pull far out like this, that effect is very subtle. So I want to go back up to the size way at the top and make this even bigger. And then I want to take the height and just tweak that even further. And then come down here to the shape depth and adjust that. I want this to look like it's, a board, just a solid board, which just has a little piece of trim that goes around the entire thing. And that's exactly what it looks like. Okay, so that's good. So now I can call this, hit enter, frame extrude. Okay, now we know it's the frame extrude. Now there will be one obviously on this side, one on the other side, but we'll focus on just the one for now. All right. Now I want to get rid of this. I just want to hide it. So I'm going to come down here to layers, and I'm going to go to layers, new layer from object selection, and whatever I have selected will automatically go in the layer. I'm going to turn the visibility off on the eye, turn the visibility off on the render, and just leave them like that. Now when I click over here, I click off, you'll see that it's no longer there. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to start extruding all of these other paths. Okay. So these ones are going to be pretty much just going straight across. So if I just show, let's say, one piece here, let's say this piece, I'm going to do the same process. So I'm clicked on path 21. This is going to be, I'm going to rename it. This is going to be the nameplate path. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option. I'm going to click and hold on this, and then go to extrude, and it will extrude. Now, it's extruding, but we don't see anything happen. I need to come down here to the object settings and change some stuff. So I'm going to go to object. I'm going to change the direction, and if I look at this here, I should see that this direction I want to extrude it, left and right, is actually the Z direction. So I'm going to change this to Z. Now we get something. Now I can go here to this and adjust it. Now you can use a slider, but it only goes so far, like right there. You could type stuff in. I'm just going to use this and just click and drag all the way across. Okay. I believe it's about there, but I'll adjust it afterwards. Okay. Now I'm going to rename this nameplate extrude. Okay, now I need to repeat that process for all these other pieces. For this, for this, for this, for this, for this, for this, for that. I'm just holding shift for that and for that. Now I can actually go through with those pieces selected like I have here, and I can keep them all selected like they are. I can hold down Alt, go to this, go to extrude, and it will do all of them at the exact same time. And so that's a bit of a time saver. Now I can go to the Z direction and then change this number until it's way out there. I'm going to about 4,665 or 8, whatever. I'll adjust it afterwards anyway. Okay, so now I can go here, and I'm just going to start to rename all of these pieces. So this one will be the bottom nameplate extrude. This one up here will be the back extrude. Okay, that's that, that's that. This one here is the screen extrude. This one here is the inside top extrude. I'm just going to call this area coin holder extrude. That's like, most of you are probably too young to know what that was. That was where we put the coins. Get closer to this one. This is the front lip extrude. Actually, it's a front top lip. There we go. And this is the front extrude. Bottom lip extrude. I just realized I wasn't putting an underscore, so I need to just go back. I want to stay consistent with these. There you go, okay. This is the coin slot extrude. That's the bottom lip extrude. Alright, did I get all of them? I did. Okay. So now I can just close these down. I don't need to have all these open. And it's just going to make it easier for me to see like what still needs to be done. Every one of the curves that came through, we're going to have to do something with. Okay, so now that we can see what's done and what's not, it makes it obviously much easier. I'm also going to take these pieces here, coin extrude, front lip, and I'm just control or command clicking these. Okay, so I'm grabbing all these ones that I just did. Then I'm going to hit Alt or Option and G. And that will group them together. Okay, that way it's very easy for me to then go through. I'm not going to move them, right, or keep it moved, but I'm just going to show you like I can move all those at the same time. We'll call this lateral extrudes. Extrude group, whatever you want to call it, just something. Alright, cool. So now what I'm going to need to do is I need to build these pieces. Okay, I need to know how big or how to build these ones. Now these are going to work a little bit differently. If I were to click this and do an extrude on it, it doesn't put the holes in it. Now if I were to grab that plus the other two shapes there, oops, and then try to do that shape, it still wouldn't put the holes in it. It would actually just extrude each one. So what I need to do is I need to actually combine these three paths here. Okay, so I'm not going to name them yet. I'm just going to leave them like that. And I'm going to go to Object up here. And then I'm going to go to Connect Objects and Delete. Now what that does is it, exactly what I said, connects the objects and deletes it. Okay, so now we have one shape with all three of these. I'm going to go to Extrude. And now we have holes. And I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to add a little bit of a, oops, not that, under caps. I'm going to add a little bit of a bevel. I'm going to go to Load Presets. I think I like this flat angled one, so I'll use that. And then, just like before, just make it bigger. And then make it a bit deeper. Oh, extend, there we go. And then if I go back to my object here and use this offset, that will control that. That's good. Okay, so that feels like that's what that board would look like. Okay, so let me just name that one. So that's going to be the lights extrude. Okay, I don't really need to name the paths. The main part is this. That's mostly what I'm concerned about. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing up here. So this one is actually path 1, path 2, group 1, and path 15. Like that's and group 2. That's all of the pieces there. Okay, now I realize they're scattered, but just how it came in. So I'm going to do the same operation, Object, Connect Objects and Delete. Now we have one shape. Back to Extrude, and there it is. Now here's a trick. I'm going to hit Undo. If I go to that light extrude and I copy it, then I can actually take that one. Oh, did I do it? Yeah, I did. Okay. I held Control and I drug it down, so that copies it. And if I open this up, I can delete this path. Okay, because there's two of them right now there. I'm going to take path 1 and just drop path 1 into there. You can see how the arrow turns to a down. And it's going to use this exact settings that I've already set up on this one for that one. So it'll save me a little bit of time if I have something that is always going to be the same or very similar shapes. Okay. Now this one's a little bit too, too deep for this one, so I'm going to go to adjust it just slightly. So let's say I adjust the cap size on this slightly, adjust the height on this slightly. That's better. Okay, now this is not light extrude or lights extrude. This is actually going to be the controller board extrude. There we go. Now it came out of the group, so I'm just going to drop this back into that group so everything's in the same group. Now I need to rotate these 90 degrees. So I'm going to grab the light extrude, shift click the controller board extrude. I'm going to go to hit R for rotate, and I'm going to grab just the red one, and I'm going to click, hold down shift, and then start dragging until that little thing in the middle says 90 degrees. Okay, it may be hard to see, but it says 90 degrees. Okay, so now I have those flat. I just need to then place them in position. Now it actually won't matter if I use the top or the bottom for the light, because it's the exact same thing. Okay, so I don't need to like rotate that around or anything. I can just place it. Now I do need to make sure they're aligned left and right wise. So I'm going to go to the move tool and just slide it over. I am going to hit middle mouse button. I'm going to scroll wheel here. Okay, that's not it. I'm going to scroll wheel here. All right, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up these edges with these edges. I see what that is too. There's like something sticking out there. I don't know what that is. We'll see. So I'm just going to line that up with those edges. That seems good. And then in this view, which is the side view, I'm just going to click on one at a time. So I'll grab the lights first, and the lights are going to go up here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this green box and just slide it over. Okay, now I can grab just the arrow, and just kind of get this nestled inside here. Now I can come over here and see what that looks like. Right, now it looks like it's still like sticking out for some reason. Oh, it's sticking out this side. The other side is fine. Alright, so we'll have to adjust that. Let me grab both of these again and align them to the other side. Okay, and you'll see why in a second. Alright, so that's good there. Now I'm going to do the controller board. So that's going to be the same thing, just grabbing this, sliding this over. If I hit the middle mouse button, I can see a bigger view of this. We may also notice that the pivot for this is way over here. And that has to do with where this original extrude was created and how I duplicated it. And it does that. It's not a huge deal at the moment, so I'm just going to leave it and kind of ignore that it's doing that. Okay, let me go into this view and just make sure that it looks nice in how it's blending with these two pieces. I don't want this to be so far down that it looks really weird. I don't want this to be so far up it's kind of floating. But just kind of like about even with these two other surfaces is good. Cool, so that works. Now, this is obviously too long for this. It's actually the other way around. These are too short for this. So if I go into my lateral extrudes, and this is why we grouped it, so we can grab all these pieces, go to object, and where it says, let me pick the direction again, where it says the offset, I'm just going to change this again until it's lined up. And I'm pretty sure doing that fixed whatever that side piece was that was hanging out here. I don't know what happened there. Maybe I just extruded one too far. Okay. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to make sure that it's, far enough that it's not going to be an issue. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Okay, let me go to the let me uncheck these. Right, now we're going to see there's a little bit of some overlap. So this frame right here is actually at the exact same spot that these other pieces are. So I just want to push the frame a little bit over just until it's like actually touching it. So now it's going to feel more like it's in the correct position. Okay. Okay, now we don't worry about the other side yet, we'll just worry about this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We have a good framework here. I'm going to hit Control S and I'm going to save this. And when I do any saving, I always want to make sure it goes into the Scenes folder, because that's going to be the #1 area where we would find those kinds of things. So we're going to go into our Scenes folder and we're going to call it Arcade. Oh geez. Arcade modeling underscore Sarcona underscore Sean. You use your name, don't use my name. Alright, so that's pretty good for the base stuff. Like all that's done. Oops. So now what we need to do is we need to build in some of these other pieces we're missing. So we're missing the lights, so we need to add some lights in here. And we're missing the controller stuff, the buttons and all that. So we need to add that as well. Now there's a bunch of different ways we can do it. We're going to do it using some of the same kind of tools that are inside here. And we're going to use the curve tools that we would have inside of Cinema. Alright, so we're going to go to the front view or the side view. So I'm just going to middle click here. And we just need one of these. Okay, and whichever one has the best view of how big the buttons and stuff need to be, that's the one we're going to use. So if I look here, let me zoom out. If I look here, you really can't see the buttons too much. Like if we zoom in really close, here it's pretty obvious. Like even at this size, we can see them. If I zoom out like this, it's a little bit hard to see with all those lines there. Okay, so I'm going to go into this view and use that one. And this gives me the size of the button that I need, which is the exact reason we're doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my spline tools. So if I go under create spline, there's actually a bunch of stuff that's inside here that we could use if we wanted to just have these. We can also go over to the spline generator tool, which is down here on the left, and this is like the pen tool inside of Illustrator. And what I can do is I'm just going to draw the shape of what I want the button to look like. Okay, so if we need to arcade, I'm searching arcade buttons over here, and you can see this is what the buttons look like. Okay, and if we look at it from a different perspective, we'll be able to see, you know, more of that direction or angle or look of what they look like. Okay, so they're like this, right? And they have a little cap on top of them like that. So that's what we're going to draw here. So I'm just going to draw first a little platform. So I want to keep this indent, okay? And I don't want to lose that. So I'm going to keep the indent, so I'm just going to go about here. And then you can see this is the pen tool like this, so I'm just going to go a little bit up like that. And then I'm going to go down here like this. And then I'm just going to click like there. That should be sufficient. Okay, then I'm just going to switch back to my move tool and click off. There we go. So that shape right there. Now we're only drawing half of this, and eventually it's going to revolve around. Now I'm going to grab my spline tool again. So I'm going to switch back to object mode. I'm going to switch back to the spline pen, and I'm just going to create a button. So this is going to come up like this. Oops. I'm going to click and drag. Click and drag. Click and drag. And click right there. Okay, so there's my button. Now it might not be perfect. I can always come back and adjust it. But that's where I'm going to start with this shape. So now what I need to do is I need to revolve this. So I'm going to hit the middle mouse here, hit the middle mouse there. I can't see where it's at because it's actually like right inside of all of this. Like there they are. Okay, so it's no big deal. I'm just going to grab both of them anyway. I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to go to lathe is what they call it. Okay, now it's doing this because it thinks that it wants me to spin it around here. So I need to adjust that so it doesn't do that. Just so it's easier to see, I'm just going to take these and just hide all of this stuff onto this layer. So I'm just going to right click and just say add objects to layer. There we go. and then I can turn the visibility off for these. I don't know why the other ones didn't go. Let's go here. Nope. I guess it really does want me to go into each one of those and hide all of them. Okay, so I'm just clicking this purple here. That coincides with that. So there we go. All right. So now let's go to these splines here and here. Back to object mode or model mode. And my pivot is currently right there. So that's why it's doing it, because it thinks that it wants to revolve around this point, not the point that's over here. So I'm going to hit O so we can get close to it. There you go. O won't get us close to it. I have to zoom in. I'm going to click on one at a time. So I'm going to click on this one. My move tool is way down here at the bottom. I can't see it. And then I'm going to go under I always forget which menu this is in. Fine. I'm looking for Axis Tools. Axis, there we go. Axis Center. Cool. This is where I need to go. Tools, Axis, Axis Center. And I need to move the axis so that it is right over here. So if I were to, I went to the tool, it did this. Okay. If I adjust the X, you can see how it's moving the X along that space. Okay, so now the pivot is in the right spot. Let's go to the other one, and it's in the same spot too, because we have this open, we clicked on it, and it worked. So now when we go to this tool over here and we go to lathe, they will lathe around each other. Okay. Now they're not perfectly centered. It doesn't need to be at the moment. I'm going to tweak it anyway. Let me just middle click here, middle click there. Let me go to this spline here. Okay, and I'm going to switch to point mode. This lets me edit the points of the curve. Okay, so I can just click on them and move them. I can zoom in, I can click on the handles and adjust the handles. I'm just clicking and dragging. And what I want to do is get something that looks more realistic. So I need to see like these two views at the same time. Okay, so I'm doing that. Somewhere over here is another point. There it is. Just going to slide this further in towards the middle. All right, and that looks pretty good. That looks like a button. So now I can just take this lathe and just adjust its position for the whole thing. Just move the whole thing so it's lined up. There we go. Okay, so there it is. So there's my button. So I can take this and this. I'm going to Alt-G that and say button. Then I'm going to use the top view to actually like place where the button's going to go. So I need to turn my layers back on. I went way too far out. And I'm going to place one, make sure it looks good, and then I can adjust it for the other ones. Okay, now what I'm looking at while I do this is this edge. So watch as I move this around. You can see how close these two edges are. Okay, so right there they're really far apart. So as I bring them closer together, okay, now they're touching, but the other side isn't. So as I move this down a little bit and over a little bit, this is helping me get a nice centering. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but we just want it to be close. So now when I come here and hit O, I can see where this is at. Okay, it's a little bit high, so let's just slide that down. Okay, and I'm not liking how small that is. So no big deal. I can hit T for scale. And then I'm not going to touch this at all. I'm just going to click and drag out here. And that'll make the whole thing bigger. There we go. So I have a little bit of a dip button here and that. And I think I also want to take maybe the button itself, like the this piece right there on top. And I want to just click and drag to make that whole thing bigger as well. I think that'll be nicer to have that just be a smidge bigger. Okay, and I'm making sure before I start duplicating that all of those pieces are lined up, and they look like they are. Okay, now I could also go in here and just maybe add a couple more subdivisions. So instead of this being 32, I'm going to set this to be, let's say 48. And the same thing with the other one, we'll set this to 48. I'm also going to go to my spline here, and instead of the angle being 5, let's set it to 2, And instead of this one being 5, let's set that to 2 as well. Okay, now that should create a really nice smooth transition for all of these. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the button, middle click, go to the move tool, and I'm just going to control or command and drag this over. Okay, and again we get it close enough lined up. Now these two buttons here and these two buttons there should be likely placed, so I'm just going to duplicate this and slide these into position using the same steps that we did in the other one. And if it's more comfortable for you to do one at a time, then do one at a time. Alright, so that's good. I'm going to control copy this over here, line these up. There we go. So now we have our buttons there. Let's click off of this, make sure I'm back on object mode. Cool. So now what I need to do is I'll need to obviously duplicate these for those, that's fine. I need to create something here. And again, we look at reference for what those things look like. Let's jump to our reference for the buttons. Okay, stick. And there's a lot of different concepts for this. So something like this where we have some kind of like black controller here and then this black knob with a stick in the middle, right? So I can do that right there. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about this one doing it the same method because I can actually build that off of different elements. So if I go over here to these base shapes, we have base shapes that we can pull from. So if I make a sphere, hit O, there we go. Whoops. There's my base sphere. And then if I go back into this and I go to, let's say, cylinder, there we go. Now we have that. Now we can adjust the size of that by using these dots here, or we can adjust the size over here. Okay. Now we're worried about proportions, so we want to adjust this and be like, all right, so that feels like that could be the size of a controller. And then we have this platform at the bottom, so I can add another cylinder. Pull this down here. Pull this open. Okay, we don't want these facets, so we're going to add more rotational segments, so 64 is a good number here. All right, so I'm going to take all three of these, group them together, call this joystick, and then I'm just going to position it. Okay, and that top view is where most of the time we're going to jump into that because we can see directly down and make sure that it's as even as we can get it by eye at least. All right, so that feels good there. Now let's go here, hit O, pull this down. There we go. So that feels like a joystick. Now I'm just going to control, drag this over here. Again, jump to the top view and slide it over. There we go. And now I just need to get those two other buttons in there. It doesn't matter which one I take, I'm just going to take one of these buttons and just control drag it. Okay, now I'm not in the top view at the moment, I'm just in this perspective view just to get it roughly positioned. And then I jump to the top view and then I move it around. It's actually pretty close. There we go. And then control drag this over here. That's actually pretty close also. Cool. So now we have our buttons on there. I can take this and just control drag this over as well. Get that roughly lined up on that side. And now I need to create some kind of lights up here. Now for these, I'm going to go with something that looks more like a drop light or a flush ceiling light. So something kind of like this, right? But it's going to be like rounded more. Okay, so I need to know how big that hole is going to be. Now I'm going to, again, do using these other shapes. Okay, so I'm going to use, instead of cylinder, I'm going to use tube. Oops, I'm going to keep it down here for now. This one has more dots, so I'm going to drag the dot here, drag the dot there. You can see how I'm creating basically that frame that's going to go around it, like we see in these. Now I'm going to need some sort of light like that, so I'm going to need some sort of shape. So I'm going to go in here, and there is a sphere. Okay, now I obviously don't want to use like this whole sphere. Oops. And I can't really get this, like if I make this huge like this, like that's probably appropriate. Let me just add more segments. Like it's probably an appropriate size. But then I have this huge sphere kind of sticking behind it. Now there's other ways that eventually we'll talk about that we can adjust what that's looking like and how we tweak it. I'm just going to delete the sphere and just use the spline tool to create that shape. Okay, so I'm going to go into my front view or side view. There it is. Okay, and I'm just going to create a little circular shape right there. And if I go under my my create spline tools, there's actually one called arc. And if we just create it, it's like, there it is. And we can change the radius of this. We can see if there's other kinds of arcs here. So let's say the sector one, the segment one, start angle, end angle. Like that's really not doing anything for us. Ring, that's not really not doing anything either. Okay, there's not really a way to control one direction or the vertical and the other direction happening separately. So I'm going to get this to roughly the right size I need to start, like that. Alright, so that feels good there. Okay, I'm going to add some more segments here, so I'm going to put this to, let's say, 20. And then I'm going to hit C. And what C is going to let me do is if I hit C on this arc, and then I hit T for the scale, I can actually just grab the green and just pull that down. Okay, now I'm able to obviously create this kind of rounding here. Go back here to lathe. And now we have that shape. Okay, on this tube, before I start duplicating it, I need more rotation segments, so 64 seems like a good number. I'm going to do... Yeah, I guess that's fine. Okay, that's good. I'm going to grab both of these, lathe and tube, group them together, and then move them up here, rotate it around 180 degrees. Slide it in position. You can see the hole here is way bigger than what I drew. So I need to scale this up. Okay, so I'm just scaling. Again, I'm not clicking on this because that'll only scale in those two directions. I want to click and drag off of it so it's uniform. Okay, that looks good from that view. Let's see when we slide this into position here what it's going to look like. All right, maybe a little bit lower. Maybe a little bit smaller. Let's go to the top view and take a look there. And you'll see you're constantly moving around. Front view, side view, perspective. That's good. We have a little lip here, little rim, and then the light. Cool. So now we can duplicate and slide it over. Should have named it first, but I guess that's just part of learning. There we go. So this is going to be light 1, light 2. Okay, so now we can save, and I'm just going to organize this a bit further and just say, okay, all the buttons here. I'm going to put all the red buttons in one group and all the blue buttons in another. Usually it's like one side, the other side. So I'm just going to organize these by sides. Okay, so those, I'm missing a button. Oh, I have an extra button there. There we go. I'm going to group these, and these are P2 buttons. And then this, Alt G or Option G.